In this chapter, I'm going to go over a bunch of stuff from the Curves menu, and I'm going to tear it off and bring it up here because I'm going to use it a lot, and also some stuff from the View menu because there are related items between the two. And now if I press play, you can see there's some strange movement happening on Raymond, and all that's to help me explain some of these things. So I'll get started with his foot, and click on that, and I've got some animation curves on here. And now if I click on infinity and check that, then I get these dotted lines that extend from the curves. And then you can see what's happening beyond the curves if you're, for example, using a cycle. So now I'm going to go into cycles, and post-infinity is the stuff that's beyond the last key on the curve, and pre-infinity is the stuff before the first key. So I'm going to go to post-infinity, say cycle, and now you can see these curves are cycling, and this one is flowing nicer than this one is because the first key and the last key is the same. So when it starts to cycle over, it's starting from back here and then just continues. So this one, it starts here and ends here, but then when it cycles, it has to recycle from the beginning. So it starts from this value. And when I press play, you can see his foot is cycling with these infinite curves. And where there appears to be two different values on the same frame, it's taking on the value where the key actually is. And so here it's taking on this value, his foot's forward. When I go forward one frame, then it takes on this value, and his foot jumped back to this value. So that's what cycle does. Then there's cycle with offset, which repeats the curve from where it left off. So it's repeating this, but from where it left off. So it's starting here, and now it's doing this again and this again. And if I adjust a key on the curve, then you can see it changing throughout. And now his foot is still cycling up and down, but now it's continuing forward because that's what the translate Z is doing. And then there is oscillate, which kind of just mirrors the curve. So it's doing this, then it mirrors it, then it starts over. So now I get a nicer back and forth. It's not snapping back and forth anymore. So that's what that does. Then there is linear, which continues the infinite value in the same direction that it was when it left off. So right now, since this tangent's flat, it's continuing flat forever. But if I was to switch this to linear, then it's continuing linearly in the same direction that it was coming from. So it's coming from here in this direction. It continues linearly in this direction. And then there is constant, which is the default. And that's just the infinite value doesn't change. It just stays at the value of the last key. And now I'm going to hide the channel box because I want to make room for some more buttons down here. These four are cycle buttons. This is pre-infinity cycle, cycle with offset, post-infinity cycle, cycle with offset. So I'm going to choose a standard post-infinity cycle, put it back on this. Now I'm going to go into bake channel option box. And you can bake keys onto infinite curves or onto something that's moving without keys of its own. Like if something was only moving because it was constrained to something else, then baking it would break the constraint, but it would add the necessary keys to keep the same movement. Stuff like that. But now I'm just going to bake this cycle. And you have your time range options, the whole time slider, or a start and end frame. And sample by is how frequently it's going to set a key. So I'm going to leave it at 1, and it's going to bake a key on every single frame, which will give a good match while it's baking it out. So I'll say apply. Now I get a key on every one of these frames, and now these are their own keys that I can adjust, and you can see now it's affecting the cycle over here. And one thing to watch for is that it's baked it starting on this value right here, not this value where it's sharing a frame. So when I baked it, I'm just undoing and redoing right now, it baked it onto this value right here because that's the first place where it could start from. So that can affect your curves a little bit, so just be careful about that. But for the translate Y, it didn't cause any problems because the start and end frame were the same, so it didn't have that effect. And if you want to bake your channels without adding any extra keys, then you can say sparse curve bake, and then it only adds a key where there needs to be a key in order to maintain the curve. So I'm going to apply it. It's actually going to break the translate Z for a second. It's going to work with the translate Y, so just focus on the translate Y. I'll say apply, and for the translate Y, it added a key where there had to be a key in order to maintain the curve, but it didn't add any extras. It broke the translate Z because it was duplicating this value and putting it on this frame where it was starting the cycle over. So that isn't very helpful. But if you just add an extra key, then it'll replace this extra key at this value. So I'm going to do it again, and this extra key is now replaced by this key's value. So then you get a result more like what you wanted. So that is baking and cycling curves, and that's it for this video.